A substantial development in the trade war. The Trump administration has announced an executive order that will remove some of the more punitive tariffs that have impacted automakers specifically. This is tariffs on steel and aluminum, materials that go into cars. We're actually being tariffed, the raw materials being tariffed in addition to any exports. So think about if you're an auto manufacturer, a car manufacturer bringing steel and aluminum in to the country to be put into the car, the raw materials, the materials that go into that, the components that go into that, were actually being tariffed. The Trump administration is basically saying that that is no longer the case. Also, they made it retroactive, so it means that any of the tariffs that went into effect that the auto manufacturers paid would be effectively rebated to them, and so that they would not have to have paid that tariff. This is a pretty substantial development because it does give an enormous amount of relief to the auto manufacturers and gives them the opportunity to continue to ramp up production domestically. There's a real, I think, trend here. As one is, I think this is going to continue. I don't think the Trump administration has any real desire to get rid of tariffs broadly. They seem pretty committed, and even in conversations that Trump has made in recent days suggest that he is steadfast in his commitment to tariffs as a strong policy, but also as a revenue generator for the U.S. government. He believes that he can cut a portion of the income tax through tariffs and is an important point of revenue generation. So this means that any hope that we would see a reversal of policy or a change in tariffs generally is very unlikely. We've also not really seen a lot of developments around the China conversations. These seem to be conversations that the White House suggests that they're having, but there seems to be some disagreement by the Chinese. Really, nobody knows. I suspect that there are conversations behind closed doors, but there's really no resolution or progress to speak of, and therefore nobody want to get ahead of themselves. Keep in mind that these negotiations are done typically in private between two countries. They're very sensitive, and therefore it could be that neither party wants to admit to sort of giving in or giving concessions. But I do think what all of the conversation that we've seen suggests is that the Trump administration is not going to reverse policy anytime soon, and the tariffs specifically on China are probably going to stay highly elevated. I do think the auto tariffs, though, do suggest something that we should be paying attention to. We've already seen the tariffs on China where the Trump administration will give exceptions to certain industries where they feel like there is a reason, a strategic or economic interest to do so. I think we will continue to see exceptions. We might see the high blanket tariffs on China, and they may continue for some period of time, maybe indefinitely. I don't know. But I do think we will see concessions that are made as they start to recognize stress in the system. Now, all of this could change. We could see some large change in posture or reduction of tariffs if consumers start to complain about not being able to find products in the stores. This could happen as early as June, but more likely back to school when consumers are going back to shop for things like backpacks and back to school supplies. That's when we probably will start to hear a lot more anxiety among consumers, and this could pressure the Trump administration to think differently about these tariffs. If anything, the trade war is continuing, and it looks as if there's not going to be a short-term reprieve, although we are expected to get some deals pretty quickly. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, actually hinted to this and said as much, that there are some deals that are really close to being done. They are imminent, and many people have suggested that we could get a deal with India. I think it's a really important development. India has an underdeveloped economy. It is a great opportunity to move some of the manufacturing. We're seeing companies like Apple that is moving manufacturing from China to India to serve the United States. India is a low-cost country to do work in, has an enormous, large labor pool that's under-tapped, and we could see some developments there. So I think we're starting to see a couple of things happen. One is the administration is steadfast in their commitments to tariffs. They aren't reversing these things anytime soon, but we are going to see some progress. These exceptions, I do think, are quite positive because it will allow some manufacturers to get some relief, and we'll start to see some deals, and I think there could be more optimism. I don't think there will be a short-term deal with China. Doesn't appear to be something that we will see. This could take many, many months or longer, and who knows, maybe indefinitely. We'll have to pay attention to that. One other thing that happened overnight is Werner, one of the largest truckload carriers and a barometer of the entire trucking sector, actually came out with one of its first earnings loss in history this past quarter, blaming largely tariff uncertainty and a slowdown in consumer spending. Werner has a very large set of exposure to retail and consumer goods, and this is where a lot of the pain is showing up in consumer freight markets. And so we can expect to see more and more pressure as we head into the second quarter as this import slump really takes its toll. The imports that should have come into the United States, the ones that would normally expect to flow in, are just not coming at the same levels and volumes that they were previously. And with that, we're going to see a slowdown in domestic trucking volume. We are projecting as much as a 5% drop in truckload volumes across the United States, which could play a pretty big toll on an already beleaguered market. This is something that trucking companies should pay attention to. The important thing right now for truckers is to stay defensive. Find loads that can keep them running. Don't try to maximize every single rate that you are offered, simply because when you go into negotiations, if you get to the point where you're pushing back on the rates that you're offered, that load may not be available. The important thing in an environment and a climate like this is go to the markets that have a lot of truckloads and pick those markets very selectively, because you want to keep running. As anything, this trade war and all of the developments around the freight economy continue to change. They're highly volatile. Best thing to do is just stay informed. You can check out FreightWaves.com for more information. We're constantly updating what's happening. We're monitoring this stuff. It is a fantastic resource if you are interested in what's happening in the trade war or specifically in the logistics and freight markets.